This episode of Places She Shapes is sponsored by JAC Project Management. What does it take to chase a dream that at the time you weren't even allowed to have? Today's guest, Michelle Mitch Lloyd Jones, knew from the moment her father took her to air shows that she wanted to be a pilot. But when she first applied to the RAF, women had only just been accepted as aircrew, and she was offered a commission as an air traffic controller instead. She didn't stop there. Mitch reapplied, was selected to be a fighter pilot, and went on to fly the Tornado F-3, deployed to exercises across the globe. After 2 years on squadron, she found her real passion: teaching. As a qualified flying instructor, she's since trained generations of fast jet pilots, and today works with Ascent Flight Training on the Texan aircraft, part of the UK's military flying training system. In this episode, Mitch shares the sliding door moments, the challenges she overcame as one of the first female fighter pilot instructors in the UK, and what it really takes to step into the cockpit when the odds are against you. This is Mitch's story, and it's an unforgettable one.
Okay, let's take it from the top.
So, Mitch, welcome to Places She Shapes at Abbey Road Studios. Thank you so much for being here. I know you've come a long way. I'm just going to read out your job title because it's quite long and complicated, but I think it's really important that we get the full view. So, you're a qualified flying instructor and former RAF fighter pilot. You work for Ascent Flight Training, providing flying training alongside the RAF. You work to train fast jet pilots on the Texan as part of the UK military flying training system.
That's correct.
It's the longest title I've had in the podcast so far. Can you tell me a little bit about what you do every day at the moment?
Yeah, so at the moment I'm training the pilots coming through. It's their sort of second level of their course that they're doing before they go on to the Hawk. We're flying the Texan, so I'm sat in the back of the aircraft, back of the cockpit, and then I'm training them. They normally go in a simulator before they sort of get to me, and then I'll do the airborne sorties with them, and also some ground instruction with them as well. So, it's really rewarding, seeing them sort of start with us with not a lot of experience, and then at the end of it, they earn their wings and get their brevet, and then they move on from there. So that's generally what I'm doing day to day.
Amazing, thank you. So, what was Mitch like as a little girl?
A bit of a tomboy, I suppose. When I was younger, there was me and my brother, and then my mum sort of left home when I was about 11 years old. So for me, I was sort of looking after my brother quite a lot from about the age of 11. And then I'm going to stop there, sorry. I'll just start again. I'll just do that one again because I'm sounding all croaky. All right. Right. Right, I'll start again. Right, sorry. I won't be like this all the way through. Right, what was I like as a little girl? Right, go. So a bit of a tomboy, really into my sports. So I loved my athletics, so I sort of focused on that a lot, doing a lot of running. And then I think my mum left home probably when I was about 11. So from about the age of 11, it was just me and my brother and my dad. Dad was working quite hard. And for me, I was sort of responsible for looking after my brother quite a lot. And then really put myself into my sport. So I was doing a lot of athletics. My mum wasn't really about anymore. She was struggling with her mental health a lot. So she was, at those days, she was institutionalised. So I'd go and visit her every couple of weeks in these horrible institutions that existed at the time. And then from about the age of 13, I sort of really started to want to focus on sport, not really sort of do anything else. I didn't have really much social, but I was then sort of starting to think that I wanted to get into my flying a bit as well, really sort of focusing on what I wanted to do. So that was sort of what I was when I was younger.
Where did the seed come from flying at that young age?
So I didn't have any family in the military at all. Dad was a bit of an enthusiast. I used to go to a lot of air shows with my dad. But I suppose I remember watching Blue Peter. And Blue Peter, they had this little sketch on where they had the red arrows flying. And it was the first time I'd seen a video from the cockpit. I mean, you got this impression of, you know, what it was like to actually fly. So that you had the camera in the rear cockpit, and then you could actually just see what was going on. And it was just like so inspiring. And I even remember the music it was set to. It was just amazing. So it just really inspired me to sort of want to do that. And then when I was doing my athletics competitions, I'd sort of put a lot of music on. I suppose a lot of that was sort of just thinking about what I was going to do with my performance. And then we drive past a lot of these Air Force bases. And they would, I'd be seeing the aircraft in the air, and they would really sort of, oh God, I want to do that. And it was just like, seemed totally out of reach at the time though. So I'd see stuff on TV. My dad would take me to these air shows, but that was probably the only connection I had. It was that, you know, I didn't have any family, like I say, that did that.
How do you think your mum being away from you and your brother at such a young age affected you?
I really had to grow up pretty quickly. It sort of made me quite independent. The experience that I sort of had with her sort of toughened me up quite a bit emotionally as well. You know, I remember there was a day when she was at home and I was playing out in the garden with my brother, and I sort of looked up at the window and she was there up at the window, sort of looking quite ghostly down at me. So I went inside thinking it was a bit odd. It was just me and her there. And when I went up into the bedroom, I realised that she'd overdosed. So I was sort of, you know, stood there. I was about, I don't know, maybe about 10, I suppose, something like that.
So how at 10 did you recognise that it was an overdose?
I think it was just her manner was, which there was obviously empty pill packets on the side of the bedside table. You know, I started getting a bit emotional, and I remember her telling me, like, don't cry, don't be a baby, you know. So I'm thinking, well, I'm on my own, I'm like 10 years old, and, you know, she's obviously trying to commit suicide. So I had to sort of grip that and just sort of, and I remember just sort of shutting back a bit and just going, right, okay, I'm going to shut that out. I've got to deal with the situation. So in those days, you didn't have telephones, did you? You know, no mobile phones, nothing. So I ended up having to, well, we didn't have a phone in the house either. So I remember going down to the local telephone box, phoning the ambulance, going up the road, going to speak to a friend to try and come and help me. And then I was just trying to keep her awake. So for me then, I think it was a little bit of an emotional shut back a bit as well. So I had to sort of protect myself a bit. So I think from that point on, I had to be very independent. And actually her not being there actually made our life a lot more stable as well. I knew what I was coming back to at the end of each day. Whereas when she was about, I had no idea what I was going to come back to at the end of a day of school. So it was weird. It wasn't a great situation, but it gave us a lot more stability, which really helped us, I think, in that point.
Does it make you closer to your dad?
Yeah, I was always daddy's girl a bit, I suppose. You know, but he was busy just trying to earn a living, really. And I think the key to it all was the fact my grandparents were so supportive. I think if they hadn't had that, I think life could have been a bit different. But they were amazing at sort of getting in and helping out. And they were really sort of the linchpin to giving my dad support, which then helped us as a family. So life was actually quite a stable thing for me going through school. And it just became the norm to go home and I'd try and cook something. Dad was at work, and you know, I'm sure there were other support systems in place at the time, but that's how it appeared to me, was that I was sort of looking after my brother coming back from school, and then Dad would come back from work, and then he'd be back for about 2 seconds and they'd drive me off to something. So he was really supportive, which was fab. So yeah.
So from that Blue Peter clip in the Hawk, the Red Arrows plane, you've then ended up flying a Hawk and now training people in a Hawk. So a lovely full circle moment. Can you talk me through, you know, I'm sure a lot of us probably saw that clip on Blue Peter and went, oh, that looks like fun, and then dismissed it. How did you then actually make that a reality?
I was just keen to join up to start with. So it was like, you've got a goal, haven't you? So you've got this goal and you've just sort of got to try and do steps and things to try and achieve that goal. So for me, it was a way of getting into the military was what I first wanted to do. I mean, when I wanted to be a pilot, women weren't even allowed to fly in the Air Force, so the role wasn't even open. And it was only a couple of years, I think I was just starting my A-levels, when the first women were allowed to actually fly, since the 50s. So, but that didn't stop me from wanting to do it. Just the fact that there were no women allowed didn't even enter my mind that I couldn't do that.
Yeah.
So I tried to find ways of joining the military to get those connections going. So I joined the auxiliary regiment to start with, which was a bit like the territorial army, but it was with the Air Force.
So how old were you?
I was 17, so I literally was on the minimum age to do it.
Okay.
But it was like a part-time. So I did that.
So what were you doing? Were you still at school, college?
Yeah. I was at school doing my A-levels.
Okay.
And I did that to start with, but I was just wanting to join up. So I put my application in first of all to join the Air Force, but I was so young that, it was like, well, thank you, but come back in a year. So I went back a year later and then went through all the tests. So you go through all your sort of aptitude tests, and I passed them all, did really well. And at this point, the first women were just getting through, and I think had just started to get their qualifications. So it was quite inspiring to see that the route that I wanted to follow had now been, the path had been opened up.
So when you say test, this is tests to do pilot training rather than tests to join the RAF?
Yeah, it's a bit of both, really. So when you want to join the Air Force, it depends what role you want to join for. So if you want to join as a pilot, you have to do these sort of different tests that are set for you: hand-eye coordination, dealing with information. So I did those, and those went really well.
So you joined saying, I want to join the RAF and I want to be a pilot.
Yeah.
Like you were very clear about what you wanted to do.
Yeah, I was. It was just something I really wanted to do. And, just that, seeing all those aircraft flying around and, and those things that we talked about earlier, it was really inspired me to do it. And like I say, it never entered into my mind that I couldn't. So did the tests, they went really well, and it all came out quite positive when I left the selection centre. Yeah. But when they actually offered me the role for joining, the letter came through the post and they didn't offer me pilot, and I was a bit devastated. And they offered me air traffic control, which is a fantastic job to do. And I was so keen to want to join that that's what I did. So I joined as an air traffic controller to start with.
Did they give you any reason why they'd offer you that
No,
role?
I didn't. No, I think, I suppose at the time there were very few women going through, and the women that had gone through had been selected from within the Air Force, so they'd already proven their officer selection. I was really young, so maybe there might have been more risk there. It was still very early days, and for women going through.
And so when you joined as air traffic control, you're going through training. What does it mean to do that?
So initially you do your officer training. So it's like officer first and then your job.
Okay.
So as an officer, you go through your officer selection, your training. And that was, for me, I think it was just over 6 months long at the time. The training system's changed a bit since I've been going through. And then from there, you then went off to your sort of trade, your branch training. So people went off to train as pilots. Some people went off to train as from an administrative point of view, and I went off to do air traffic control training. So I did that. That was about another 6-month course. And then from there, then I got posted to my station, which was Boscombe Down, and that for me was a real opportunity, because there was lots of opportunities to fly. I was a liaison officer with some of the squadrons, and I managed to get some seats with qualified pilots and do some flying. I actually got written up by a lot of those guys who were test pilots.
What does written up mean?
So they wrote reports on me.
Okay.
Yeah, so they wrote reports, because even though I was there and I was training as a controller, it wasn't what my heart I really wanted to do. So I really wanted to fly. So so I got written up by these guys, and these assessments all got put together in a report, and I applied for a change of branch. I wouldn't recommend it as a way of going in. I think you should always go in wanting the role that you've been chosen to do. But for me, it was, I really wanted to join the military. And then I found that way of getting through. So I managed to get a branch change. So I did 3 years as a air traffic controller. And then from there, then I changed across to pilot. Yeah.
What happens on day one of pilot training?
So initially you do a ground school. So you arrive, in fact, in every stage of training is a different aircraft at the moment, the way the training system works, and how it was for me. So you start on one aircraft, it's normally quite slow, and you get taught the basics. So you learn a theory about the technical side about how it works. You learn about how an aircraft actually flies, all those sort of aerodynamic side of it. And then you get put through a series of airborne lessons, I suppose you could call it. So you get a little 30-minute brief on the ground, and then you go off with your instructor, and then they'll teach you, and then you have to repeat it. But it's actually quite high pressure because you get assessed on every single trip. And if you don't make the grade, then you're given a little bit of extra time. And then if you don't make that, then a little bit more. And then they'll get to a point where obviously you can only have so much extra flying, at which point you could get removed off the course. So for me, that first course went well. I was there. I'd never flown before. I had no idea about flying.
So what was it like the first time that you flew a plane, presumably with somebody else in the plane, but you were in control? What was that like?
It was so different to what I was expecting, because on the ground, you see all these images, but then when you're actually in the air, you're actually feeling all the physical sides of things. So you're getting, the effects of G on you, which isn't a lot in those first early stages. But if you progress through the training system, I went from a little aircraft, that was maybe flying like 120 knots, 120 miles an hour, to then going through the training system, ended up on a Hawk, where suddenly I've got a helmet on, I've got a mask on, I'm wearing G pants, I'm being exerted to 6G.
So what are G pants?
G pants. So G pants are a piece of equipment that you put on, a bit like chaps, but they inflate. So you put these trousers on, you plug them into the aircraft, and as the G increases, the air goes into them and squishes against your legs. And what that does is that, combined with an anti-G straining manoeuvre, will try and keep the blood in your brain and stop you from basically greying out or blacking out. So the more G you're under, all that force wants to push all the blood from your head all the way down into your feet. So what these trousers do will squeeze your legs to try and hold it, and it's a way of you pushing against them as well. So the actual trousers themselves will only give you about 1 extra G of tolerance on top of your natural tolerance, and the rest of it is you straining to try and keep all this blood up in your head. So
wow,
yeah.
Okay.
So you're doing all that.
So how far into? I mean, presumably that doesn't happen on day one. That you're wearing your G pants.
Yeah. well, it does actually. Yeah.
Does it?
But not on day one of not with the smaller aircraft.
No. Okay.
So smaller aircraft.
So you're building up. So what's the timeline between you first flying a plane to having to worry about G-force?
You're experiencing G on that course, but I suppose the very first course, you might be first few flights, you're just sort of learning to go up, down, left, right, how to turn it, how to descend. So it's quite gentle, not much more than you would experience on a day-to-day sort of level. But once you start getting into max performing the aircraft, because at the end of the day, we're training people to be fighter pilots. So you need to be able to learn how to max perform your aircraft. In order to do that, the tighter your turns, the faster you go, the more G you're going to be pulling. So even at those early courses, it's probably about, I don't know, maybe 10, 20 hours in, you're starting to experience those G forces.
So you've only done 20 hours of flying?
Maybe less than that, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And for me, the other thing was, what I never expected was air sickness as well. So that was a bit of a whammy for me. It was, I'm got this dream, and then every time I went flying on those first few courses, I was just feeling rough. I was, I might feel really awful in the aircraft, and I'd land and I'd go and throw up because I just felt that awful. We still get a lot of trainees now that have problems with air sickness.
And what do they do to combat that?
So exposure can help you, and that's what happened with me. I sort of hid it to start with.
Yeah.
I mean, when I was on the Tucano and I was going through training, I hid it, and I'd just say, "Oh, can you just take control for a minute?" Because the constructor was in the bag, and I'd throw up in a bag and put my bag in my pocket. I wouldn't tell them
in the plane.
Yeah, but then I did an inverted spin. We don't invert spin anymore. I did an inverted spin, and you can imagine what happened to that bag. So the bag, and the instructor's going, "Oh my gosh, Mitch, are you okay? You okay?" As it all sort of starts running down the back of the canopy, right? And I'm like, "Oh no," So at that point, everything came out in the open, and I'd managed to hide it up to that point. So I'd probably gone through like 100 hours of flying before anybody really found out. Yeah, because I didn't want to
How
let
old
people
are you
know.
at this time?
I am. Bear in mind, I did 3 years as a controller, so I was probably about 24. no, 24. I was about
My
24.
strategic puking when I was 25 was very different
different-
to that strategic puking.
So obviously when it came out in the open, and what we do now is you can give people medication, a bit like your seasickness tablets.
Yeah.
So you take that. You're not allowed to go flying on your own, but you can go with an instructor, and you just build that tolerance up. And
Okay.
the more your body
The more you
gets
do it.
exerted to it, the easier it is. And now, well, for years I've had no issues at all.
Really?
But some people it is a major. I don't know. It's just these things that you feel that you never would have encountered until you get all those senses. You know, your brain is thinking one thing, you've got your inner ear doing one thing, and you're exerting all these forces on your body. And particularly in the aircraft that I'm flying now and on the Hawk, you've got a mask on, you've got the smell of the fuel and the not in the cockpit, but as you're walking out to the aircraft, maybe on the flight line,
Yeah.
you've got the smell of the rubber, and all these senses can overload you. And as soon as you put your helmet on, we say it's a bit of a capacity reducer, because you put this helmet on and it can sort of reduce your capacity. So just getting used to strapping in, the aircraft I'm in the Texan, we're strapping into so many different things. It's an American system. So we've got shoulder straps and lap straps and connectors down here. And we've got like 2 oxygen and a mic tail lead, and we've got leg restraints and things because we're sat on an ejection seat. So many things there, all for safety that we have to do. So it's, for those first few trips, just strapping in is pretty overwhelming. So
Yeah, I can imagine. Wow. Okay. So you have this childhood dream of being a pilot. You then become a pilot and realise actually that it's making you a bit sick.
yeah.
So then how do we? And you mentioned that you're being trained to be a fighter pilot. Can you tell me what is a fighter pilot?
So when I went through training, we had split roles, different aircraft on the front line. We had aircraft that were what we call fighters, which were there to intercept other aircraft or shoot down other aircraft. So we weren't dropping anything. We were there to protect the skies. We'd do things like quick reaction alerts. We'd be sat in a shed, sort of just waiting around in case the alarm went off, and then we'd run to the aircraft and scramble effectively and go and intercept aircraft. So that was our main role, and we'd also do that down in the Falkland Islands. So as a fighter pilot in my time, it was sort of defending the skies for other platforms that were operating in areas. So that's what we were sort of our main role was.
Yeah. So you went. Can you tell me about the sort of transition through the planes? So you went from a Hawk to the Tornado F3. Can you just talk me through how that works?
Yeah. So like we said, you're constantly assessed. So when you're assessed, if you are doing I'll start again. So when you're assessed, you are you've got different levels of performance. So you can get graded 1 to 6 at the time when I went through, or 0 to 6. So if you got a 6, that was absolutely amazing. 3 was sort of acceptable. So you could obviously have a band there between 3 and 6 of all these different people and how they were performing. So the people that were doing exceedingly well would go off and do their single seat. And those people that were maybe, passing but weren't doing quite as amazingly would normally go off on a 2-seat cockpit. So I went through the Hawk and got to the end of the Hawk, and I did like all the convex, which is like learning how to fly it, and then you do all the tactical stuff as well. So I passed all that. I got my wings and got my brevet, and then you get streamed. So you basically get told which platform you're going to go onto, and you normally get put onto the one that's best suited to you. Now these days it's multi-role, so you are going onto a platform that does everything. So it's a totally different ball game now. But for me, I got streamed onto fighters, so that's when I went from the Hawk, and I graduated from that, and then I went onto the Tornado F3.
So presumably you were scoring high on that scale.
Well, that was actually it was just sort of average, really. It was a 2-seat cockpit, so I actually. Flying didn't come naturally to me, but I was always hardworking. I was always prepared. And I think having that self-awareness as well in the profession, if you were arrogant and didn't really know, go, oh yeah, it was a really good trip, but actually it was awful, I don't think you'd get very far. You had to have that ability to understand your performance, know where your weak points were and what you could work on. So I always had that, but I was never excelling. I was always, I struggled at times. There were times where I'd need extra hours, but I made the grade and I got through. So, but it wasn't a particularly easy journey for me, I'd say.
Can you tell me about the Tornado F3 as a plane and how it was different to the Hawk, to the Hawk being kind of the Red Arrows plane that people will understand. The Tornado F3, can you tell me about that plane?
Yeah, so twin cockpit. So you obviously I was in the front as the pilot with a navigator in the back. They were operating the radar. And then it was a lot faster. So you were regularly going up to about 1.3, 1.4 Mach, which is probably like about 1,000, 1,200 miles an hour. So it was really fast.
Yeah.
It didn't perform that well up at altitude, but compared to some of the other aircraft that were around that the Americans flew. But in the cockpit, you were generally flying quite low at times over the sea or at high altitude. And obviously you had all that kit with you as well. And you also had a suite of defensive aids, which were things like chaff and flare that would protect you if something was shot at you. So you'd be learning about how to maneuver against those sorts of things. And then the actual aircraft, it had sweepable wings as well, which caused a few issues because you had to manually move the wings depending on the speed that you're at as well. So that was quite challenging at times. So.
You just explain sweepable wings.
The wings moved, so you could sweep them backwards and forwards depending on the speed you were at. So that was an extra thing. So you had to fly it, move the wings as well as actually carrying out the tasks that you were doing.
So it's not, at the time, and I don't know if it's different now, there weren't that many women flying Tornado F3s, were there?
No, there was a lady ahead of me. She'd been on the squadron for a couple of years and left just as I arrived. But no, I was sort of that sort of early batch of women coming through. Yeah, there weren't a lot ahead of us.
Were there any differences? How were these planes designed for a woman's body compared to a men's? Because there's different. We have different needs, don't we?
Yeah. I know the lady ahead of me trialled a nappy, so I'll just sort of. No, it was designed for a man, and particularly in those days, even things like just going to the loo was quite an interesting one because when I was there was no option for me.
This episode of Places She Shapes is sponsored by JAC Project Management. JAC have been delivering stunning offices, providing expert advice, honest leadership, and a can-do attitude since 1979. Project management, cost consultancy, and contract administration for office fit-out and relocation projects. JAC creates spaces where people and businesses can thrive. You can find out more at jac-group.co.uk.
Were these planes designed for a woman's body compared to a men's? Because there's different. We have different needs, don't we?
Yeah. I know the lady ahead of me trialled a nappy, so I'll just sort of. No, it was designed for a man, and particularly in those days, even things like just going to the loo was quite an interesting one because when I was there, there was no option for me. So I'd be on 8-hour sorties, air-to-air refuelling, with no available means to relieve myself in that sense. So that was quite a challenging one. And now there's lots of options out there for women, but no, it was still a little area that was lacking, and I think the kit wasn't designed for women. They're still looking at it. It's still, even after all these years, it's still in its infancy. But I sort of seemed to the kit fitted me quite well, so I didn't have an issue with it. Yeah. And the ejection seat fitted. You get your legs measured, so I fitted all. Your body measured, so I fitted into all of it. Yeah. But it wasn't designed for a woman in that sense. But it was mostly the long sorties which is the issue.
Can you explain sortie for me?
Yeah. So basically, it was the actual flying event that I did is what I called a sortie. Okay. And then, so when I was doing local sorties out of Lucas, for example, up in Scotland, they might only be an hour long. So, have a drink before, as in a cup of tea or, a glass of water or something. But, when you're on 8 or 9 hour sorties and you're air-to-air refuelling, obviously that's not, it's a bit more of an issue. So, yeah.
Okay. So you were deployed to the Middle East and the Falklands and exercises across the globe. Can you take me inside one of those missions?
Yeah. So, when we were out in the Falklands, we used to sort of just, it was more of a presence really. So we'd fly around the islands at different altitudes, just sort of just saying, look, this is us here, and we'd man the QRA there. When we're up at when we're out in operations, we could probably do quite long sorties. So we'd get airborne, transit to an area, we'd air-to-air refuel, so we'd actually get It's like going to the petrol station, but in the air, and you'd sort of got to get your refueling probe into a basket, airborne up at 25,000 feet, trying to put something that's, not much bigger than, than your arm into a basket to take fuel on board. So you'd be doing that.
Wow.
And then sometimes it went a little bit wrong. So maybe somebody before you might have broken the basket. So then you've got that option. You've got to monitor your fuel and work out if you've got the fuel to do what you need to do. So then if not, you might have to turn back home, or you might have to take over as the lead for that formation. And then we go cross border, and then sort of patrol the sky. That's what I was doing at the time.
Wow, amazing. You faced a bit of a crisis of confidence. Can you talk me through that?
Yeah, I think it was there from the beginning, really. Confidence for me now, looking back at it, it's so important. And I was underconfident going through. And even when I got onto a squadron, like I'm on a squadron, but my confidence was so low.
Why do you think that was?
Gosh, I didn't have that self-belief that I could do it, really. It was that sort of, I'm doing it, but why, I can't believe I'm here, really. It was that sort of, this is me doing the job, but I'm not believing in what I'm actually doing, or I'm not believing that I'm good enough, I suppose. I'm not believing that I'm good enough. When I finished the Hawk, I had an interview, leaving chat with my boss at the time. And in that chat, he goes, "Oh, congratulations on passing the course. Good luck on going to the Tornado, but I don't agree with you as a woman going forward onto your frontline squadron. Not me personally, but as a woman going
Why?
that way." But that was just his view at the time. So I thought, oh, that's really nice. Thanks very much. Now, obviously, that moment didn't ruin my confidence. It wasn't great to start with, but you then arrive on a squadron with particularly confident older people that are very experienced. It's quite intimidating. So if you're struggling and you know that you're making the odd error here and there, and you're making mistakes, to then have people like that who are quite dominating, it then can really sort of make you even struggle even more. So it was quite challenging, actually.
Did you feel like people were noticing you a bit more because you stood out as being the only woman, and that therefore they were going, "Oh, she messed that bit up"? Or
probably at the time, because there was only one other lady that had come through, in my area. I think I don't want to be treated any differently. It doesn't matter, that I'm a woman. I'm just a person on the squadron, so I just want to be treated the same. Yes, I wasn't performing to my, as good as some of the other guys, but I was doing the job and I was getting the job done.
Yeah.
And at that point in time, but you just felt like maybe the spotlight was on you, and I just wanted to be that perfect person that came through. I wanted to be the perfect officer and the perfect woman that was this role model going through.
Are you a perfectionist?
Yeah, probably. I wanted to be, but I ended up not being. That was a problem. So it was quite a dilemma, really. I wanted to be this perfect person that was going through, but the reality was I was finding it really hard.
Interesting. So this that was your crisis of confidence. What happened after that?
So I think the first year on squadron was an amazing experience, and it was just, and I was getting the job done, but just about. Towards the end of the second year, things weren't working out so well. So at the end of that 2 years on squadron, it was like, right, Mitch, I think you need to go on to something else because this isn't really working for you. So for me, that was this huge.
Somebody said that to you?
Yeah. It was basically the squadron. It was like, right, you need to move on to something else because this isn't really, you're not really excelling in this platform at all.
Yeah.
And I was struggling, and there was lots of other things going on personally as well. That was just, I was massively under a lot of stress, and my confidence was just really low. I also realised as well that I needed glasses, which I wasn't wearing at the time, which might have helped a little bit as well.
Okay.
I mean, we have eyesight tests, but it wasn't the best one that I'd done at the time. So, so that was a real sort of slap, really, because I didn't see it coming. I've always had that self-awareness of, my performance, and if things aren't going well, I'll sort of knuckle down and try my best to, as long as you're prepared and you're working as to your best, then other people will work for you. But I found that a real whoa. So I had a bit of a moment, really, where all these dreams of what I wanted to do and I was there were suddenly sort of crashing down, and I was, what am I going to do now? So I had all these thoughts of, is this really what I'd be doing? A few years back, I'd looked at, did I want to run a restaurant? Shall I go into a totally different profession and just throw it all in? Do I go back to air traffic? It was a job I enjoyed. It was a really good job. And I seriously looked at doing that and approached the officer who was in charge of that at the time. And then I was offered an instructional role on the Hawk, which was obviously the platform I'd just been training on a couple of years prior. And that was sort of the making of me, really. I just sort of went from all this area of stress and this dream that I'd had of trying to be this sort of perfect role model fighter pilot to now being in an environment where I was teaching, and I absolutely loved it. And again, the confidence initially got me a little bit. I was a bit like, things haven't gone so well on the squadron. I'm now instructing, but 2 years on, I was doing well. I ended up getting more and more responsibility. Ended up being an examiner who actually instructed the instructors and tested the instructors as well. So, and I absolutely just loved instructing. And
what is it about instructing that you enjoy?
It's just so rewarding to be able to see somebody with very little experience or a certain basic level experience come through the training system, and then to come out the other side and they develop from not just their skills but as an individual as well, and to see them then move on, and then because I've been doing it for quite a while, you then see them come back as instructors as well. So I think it's really, really rewarding. So,
and what kind of age are the people that you're generally instructing?
So it depends on the system. A lot of the people coming through at the moment are maybe towards their sort of late 20s, early 30s. Because the training system's taken a little bit longer.
Okay.
But it's a bit of an elastic band, really. It sort of moves about, and the length of time that it takes to get through does vary. So anywhere between sort of ages of 25, maybe they joined up like me when they were 18, 19, to people that are in their 30s. So, and loads of different sort of family circumstances and personal relationships and things. So it's a real mix of people. So it's lovely. Yeah.
So this first training in the Hawk it's still in the RAF.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I did that for 5 years on the Hawk. And then at the end of that, then I was pregnant. So I was pregnant with my little boy. So I then went off to Lincolnshire, followed my husband over to that part of the world. And then once I'd had my maternity leave, I then went back to teach at a lower level of training. So still instructing, but at EFT, which is the very first course that we were chatting about earlier. So I did that for a few years. And then I went to go back to the Hawk as well afterwards. But at that point, the Air Force didn't need a lot of people. In fact, if anything, they were cutting back. There was a lot of cutbacks and reducing the size of the force. So I ended up wanting to stay in the military, but ended up leaving. I had to leave because I got to my time and my sort of point that I needed to leave. And an opportunity came up to work on the new Hawk in the simulator. So I ended up doing that. And did that for 3 years.
So what does that mean? What do you do?
So you're working and you're instructing, but you're working in the synthetic environment. So, like a massive computer, it's obviously not a game, but, you're operating a console where you've got somebody in a simulator in a dome. And it's such a big part of flying training these days. It's not just about getting in the air. There's so much synthetics. And, the F-35 these days, I'm pretty sure it's all synthetics up to the point where the first time you get in the aircraft, you're on your own. There are no two-seat cockpits. So that is sort of embraced a little bit earlier in the training system as well. So that they do we do synthetic training. So that's what I did. I was actually one of those instructors before I then went out to instruct in the Middle East for 5 years. And then I came back to instruct back here. So I've been back here now for 5 years, instructing back in the air. So.
Wow. Yeah. So just tell me about the Middle East training.
So I was working for Air Force out there, and I was just training their sort of students. So like it was a university course.
Okay.
And it was their first stage of training. But I was the only, I think I was probably their first female instructor that they had over there, working with. It was quite an honour to be there, actually, because I was working with people from all different nationalities, different countries that weren't really used to women working in their environments. So just a really enjoyable and sort of sort of a rewarding job. But after 5 years, it was like, well, I think it's now time to come back. And for our sort of kids' education and things, we decided to move back after that. But yeah.
Okay. So you moved back, you're now in the Hawk again, instructing?
I'm in the Texan now. So yeah,
Texan.
so I'm in the Texan. Been on that for 5 years, but I'm not in the military. So work for Ascent Flight Training. So I'm a civilian. Working alongside the military and doing exactly the same job, just training the guys. But I've got stability, so I'm not going to get posted around now. I can just stay where I am at the moment, and just but still contribute and still instruct, which is what I love doing.
And tell me about the Texan.
So that's a turboprop. So it's got propeller. It's got. I'm sat in the back of the cockpit. Students sat in the front. Yeah. They do quite a lot of synthetics, so they're working in the simulator to start with, and then they come with me. And then the Texan, it's sort of a middle ground speed of aircraft going through the training system. So you've got the EFT, which is the slower side of it. You've got the Texan, and then you've got the Hawk before they go on to frontline aircraft. So it's really, it's a lovely little capable aircraft. We do lots of different stuff on it, even some quite tactical flying as well. So it really keeps me interested as well. I've done it for 5 years. And it really brings the students on. So they're learning how to fly and sort of come to us quite wet behind the ears in some senses. But then by the time they leave us, they're really matured, capable pilots.
Yeah.
Done a lot of tactical flying by the time they leave.
And as the instructor, is it like when you learn to drive and they can take full control and press the brake and the clutch?
Yeah, it's a bit like, it is a bit like, it's a good question, because it is a bit like that. So I've got dual controls in the back.
Okay.
Well, as in I've got a stick and a throttle. And most of the time, the guys are, very capable people. I'm saying guys as in that's girls as well. It's
yes,
everybody, yeah,
general,
but generic. But they the most of the time they're getting on and doing it themselves, but you have, as an instructor, just always got to be on your toes, because there might be an occasion where suddenly the situation will change and you've just got to be there and get ready to take control.
Okay.
And it's called sort of timely intervention, because what you don't want to do, you've got to let them learn, but you can only take it so far, so it doesn't get unsafe. So you've got to step in, let them learn, but also don't let it develop to the point where you cause some sort of.
So I have the same situation in my business where you've got to let them learn, but it's not a life and death situation. How are you when you're in the air at speed? How do you make that decision on how far to let it go before you step in?
Yeah, some of that comes through your training. But obviously, if we're operating at 250 feet above the ground and we're flying in this aircraft, we're only flying at 240 knots, so it's like almost 300 miles an hour. But we're
still quite fast.
It's still quite fast, and it's quite close to the ground. So there is not a lot of time to allow those errors to build, particularly. And there's a lot of sensors on the aircraft that will tell you that your height's low, or you're about to fly into a mountain type thing. So, but it'll give you lots of notice. So there's systems now that protect you, which we didn't have back in the 90s.
Okay.
But so it's down to us as instructors, as we learn, and we sort of trained ourselves as well to recognise these situations, and make sure that they don't develop into something unsafe. But obviously, particularly on landings as well, if somebody's not getting the landing right, you've got to make sure you try and take it before it can build into something that's a bit nasty. So
yeah, wow. So how many hours a day are you doing in the air?
That will vary, because my experience, I'm one of the more experienced people there. So there's a group of us that have been around for a while now. So we'll tend to do a lot of supervisory duties as well. So we might just fly once in the day, which could be from an hour to an hour and a half. But then on the rest of the day, we could be monitoring flying. So there's air safety and risk management. It's in business, it's in flying, it's across the board, isn't it? And so we're there monitoring the risk and monitoring the weather, making sure it's fit for people to go flying, making sure that they're ready to go flying, and that we're not sending somebody flying that's maybe not ready, for example. So there's lots of supervision that goes on rather than just the actual individual sortie that person's flying.
And have you ever had a student who's been sick in a bag?
Yes. And I understand, you see. So that's what's quite nice, is that, yes, I've struggled, and yes, I've been airsick, but I've got through it.
Yeah.
And, and I'm doing a job that I love, and I've hopefully helped train a lot of people that have gone through to different careers.
Yeah.
but I do understand, and I think maybe that helps a little bit for being an instructor.
You've got the empathy.
Yeah, I have got the empathy, and I do understand that if someone's feeling rough, what that actually is like, because it's incapacitating. Your ability to listen just diminishes. All you can just sort of, your focus just is not great. So. Yeah, and I understand it when people are struggling, because there's a lot of extra self-induced pressure as well, which comes with it. So, yeah, there's a bit of empathy there, hopefully.
Good. You're into mountaineering and adventure sports, and part of your life. How do they play a part in your life and your work?
Yeah, I think they've played a bit less at the moment, just because life's pretty busy. So I think when I was, a few years back, it's such a great thing to have stuff outside of work, isn't it? And even when I was going through flying training, I managed to instruct in a mountaineering centre. So that was my sort of first exposure to teaching. And we're very lucky where we are as well, that we've just got the mountains of Snowdonia just close by. So being able to have all those fantastic sports and things close by is great. But I think life's a bit busy with a family and a job and renovating a house that, I haven't had a lot of time to do all the extra fun stuff at the moment, but I'm hoping that'll...
Your daughter's an actor?
Yeah, she is. Yeah. She's obviously, that's what she's aspiring to do as a career.
Yeah.
So, she
amazing.
wants to do that, yeah.
So knowledge, preparation and confidence, you've called those your cornerstones.
Yeah.
Can you just talk me through those?
So the confidence, obviously, we chatted about quite a lot, but looking back on it now, that's really critical for, when you see somebody that's really underconfident, you can really see it impacting the performance. And it's really easy to say, well, just believe in yourself and crack on with it. But if you don't, there's a fine line between confidence and arrogance, isn't there? And if you overstep that mark, then that can get dangerous, because you can not see things unsafe happening. Preparation's essential, and I don't see many people that I'm training that are not prepared. They want to be there, and they're going to work to get there. And if you don't, the chances are you won't succeed. Yeah. But for me, I didn't want to give anybody an excuse, being some of the first to go through, of having that excuse of, well, she wasn't really that great, or she wasn't, like, I've got to do as much as I can to
control the things you control.
Yeah. So it's like, well, I'm going to knowledge, if I know all my rules, I know all my regulations, I know what I should be doing, then hopefully that will prepare me as well as I can on the ground so that I can perform in the air. Yeah, so that preparation, and if you are prepared and you're prepared to work, then other people will work for you. If you're not putting the work in, then I think people will go, well, that person's not making the effort. So we're all there to instruct, and we should treat everybody the same. But if there's not that same commitment, then you can see it having an impact on others as well.
Who are your mentors and role models?
There was a few people as I was younger that sort of, when I was in the auxiliary regiment, a few of the guys there sort of really looked after me. They were old and hairy, old sort of guys that had been maybe in the regulars that had come back and were in the auxiliaries, and they really sort of helped me develop to then join the Air Force. So I'd say that they were a little bit there, but I didn't really have anybody, to be honest. There was nobody ahead of me, or there was nobody doing the job that I wanted to do. So I've had to be quite independent. And did I really need one? I don't know. I just felt that I was just one of the guys going through. I didn't feel that I had anybody to really look up to.
When you were having that sort of confidence, wobble, would it have been helpful to have had somebody, do you think? Would that have made
Possibly,
a difference?
Yeah. I mean, there were individuals, don't get me wrong, that were always great, and and there was always support, but I wouldn't put it as one person, because our lives are quite transitory, where we're moving from place to place, to job to job, so you don't have that stability of individuals there. And don't get me wrong, the first girls going through were, that massive inspiration of, wow, there's actually people doing this now. But I think for me, it was quite I didn't think I was any different to anybody else, so I'm just going through like anyone else, really. So I didn't really have anyone to sort of look up to in that sense.
Do you say you're ambitious?
Yes. Yeah. I want to, whatever I do, I'd want to do it well, whether that's within my capability. Yeah, and even if even now, eventually I'm going to have to stop flying, my medical at some point is going to stop me from doing that. But I'm hopefully going to keep going for a bit longer. But when that does happen, whatever I do want to do, I want to do it well. So yeah.
And what are you a beginner at right now?
I'm a beginner at writing, actually. Yeah, I've tried writing,
Yeah.
and I had visions of me at the age of 50 being on a red carpet with my book and film, but
Okay. Are
but
we
I'm now
novel, memoir? What are we thinking?
screenplay, like
Oh,
yeah, but it's still in its bits. I don't want to be that person that dies and it's there on the floor, but
okay.
yeah, I'm 53 and I still haven't finished it.
Okay. But you've started.
I started, but I started quite a long time ago. Yeah,
Okay.
so yeah.
Okay. Okay. Looking back, what's the achievement or mission you're proudest of?
Um, Gosh, probably my time on the Hawk as an instructor. That's, you know, being able to help all those people go through, and you know, outside of my family side of things, professionally, I'd say that was the bit that I'm the most proud of.
Mm.
Where I've gone from somewhere that's gone from being quite underconfident and lack of self-belief to somebody that's now really helping others, and that's the bit that I've loved, and that's the bit that I'm probably the most proud of.
So if you could sit with your younger self, maybe the little girl at the air show, what would you say to her?
Easily said. Oh, what would I say? I would say try and believe in yourself a bit more, and believe in what you're doing, so that and don't let others overpower you. Like, you know, so those older, more confident people, don't let them sort of batter you down a little bit, and just believe in what you're doing, and go for it.
But don't you think, to have had that seed, as a teenager and watching Blue Peter and at that air show, to then actually being a pilot, flying these amazing machines without anybody in your family having done that or showing you the way, like, you believed in yourself.
Yeah, but I didn't think it was anything unusual. I just was taking the path that I wanted to take. I didn't feel it was anything that I couldn't do, and I didn't feel there were any barriers from stopping me from doing it. I didn't think people shouldn't let me do that. Yeah.
Oh, amazing. Okay. The podcast is called Places She Shapes. I have 3 questions that are around the title of the podcast. So the first one is places. You're in a room with everyone you've ever met, dead or alive,
Yeah.
excluding your immediate family. Who would you look for first?
Wow, that's a good one. Who would I look for first? Oh my gosh. I would look for. Gosh, who would I look for first? Let me have a think. Sorry, guys.
That's all right. So it might be a friend or a teacher
Yeah.
or
Yeah. Yeah, I'm just trying to.
grandparent, maybe. I mean,
Yeah, well, definitely a grandparent, but yeah, definitely a grandparent. But you said not immediate family. So I suppose, who would I look for first? I would look for. I know, I'd look for some of the guys that were on the regiment with me. Yeah,
Yeah.
because they were just really supportive and great.
yeah. Do you keep in touch with?
Not really, no. With a couple of them, and I actually need to go and see them, to be honest. Yeah.
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 Oh, thank you. So the she question: who's the woman you turn to for advice and why?
I don't, which maybe that's a bit of an issue. I don't. I tend to not have anybody to turn to advice for in that sense. I'm quite. I tend to just deal with it all on my own and just crack on and just keep going on. I'm sort of just I'll, as people that know me, I'll just keep going, and I'll just fill my time with so much that, do I stop and go to anybody for anything? Probably not. I might just keep it in a little bit, which maybe isn't necessarily the best thing. Yeah.
Maybe that guardedness comes from.
Or maybe my best mate, Jane. She's great to have a bit of a chinwag, but again, it's not that often really. So yeah.
And then shapes. How would you shape your ideal day?
Oh, my ideal day. Ideal. I don't do this, but my ideal day would be: I'd get up early.
Yeah.
I'd do some yoga,
Mhm.
and then have a nice breakfast.
Mhm.
I'd all be nice and fresh for the day, and then I'd go to work. And then I'd come back nice and early, not too long a day, and then I'd spend a lovely amount of time with my family. And then maybe, go out for a nice sort of relaxed sort of dinner or something, and then come back and then have an early night, I suppose.
Amazing. That sounds like a lovely day. I like that work is still in your ideal day.
Oh yeah. I don't really want to. Retirement for me is not really a thing that I'm even thinking about,
Yeah.
to be honest.
But unlike most of us, yours will come down to, like your flying will come down to the medicals, which I assume are yearly. Or
Yeah, but I probably will find something else I want to do.
Yeah, of
so
course,
I'd probably just
but
branch off into something else.
yeah.
So,
So do you still love flying as much as you thought you would as that 11-year-old?
I do, but it's not necessarily the actual flying itself. It's the teaching side of it that I love. So that's the bit that's keeping me there every day.
Amazing. Thank you, Mitch, so much. It was
Thank
great.
you.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to subscribe to the Places She Shapes podcast here on YouTube and leave a like on the video if you've enjoyed it.
Okay, let's take it from the top.